This podium. My name is David Kakaninden, and welcome to the 8th Annual Integrative Medicine Day. Thank you all so much for being here. It is our pleasure to welcome you today, and thank you also to the Oregon Health and Sciences University. I mean, this facility is amazing. So it's just such a pleasure to be able to host this event. And it's been a lot of fun putting it together for you all, so we hope you enjoy. If you haven't had the chance to check the program, we are starting today with a student panel. And this is basically the final moment in a long, grueling process to earn scholarships provided by the generous Bob's Red Mill. And so each of these students has already submitted a video that is related to the topic of food as medicine and how it applies to their practice. They have participated in interviews that basically whittled out the folks that try to get the person who has the best communication skills possible. And here we are with the finalists. Each of them has already won $3,000, and they are now competing for a $5,000 prize and a $6,000 prize through this discussion. And I'd like to welcome also our panel of judges here sitting in front of us. When I say your name and your title, please give a wave or stand up or a dance or whatever you prefer. So let's start with Lori Sobelson, who is representing Bob's Red Mill. Thank you very much. Without Bob's Red Mill, this event would not have happened today. So thank you so much for all of your contribution and efforts over these years. We really appreciate it. The second judge I have on my list anyway, this is no particular order, Susan Hunter, who is the Vice President and Chief Bottle Washer at the National University of Natural Medicine. If at any point I'm stepping too far from the mic because I'm too tall, just let me know if you can't hear me. Next we have Chris Brown, who is the Associate Director of the Master of Science in Nutrition and Functional Medicine at the University of Western States. We have Julie Briley, who is a naturopathic physician and lead physician of the Food as Medicine Institute at NUNM. We have Samantha Simmons. I spent the whole morning with the Suzanne, I'm sorry. Samantha Simmons, who is the president of the Oregon Collaborative for Integrative Medicine. And who is colloquially known as the chief executive of all things integrative medicine. We have Clyde Jensen, the senior executive of the Oregon Collaborative for Integrative Medicine. So, without further ado, this discussion will run about 45 minutes, and then we will have a 10-minute break for the judges to decide who is the winner. And to start, we'll have a 2-minute opening statement. Each student will have 1 minute to respond to a series of questions, and then at the end, they will each have a 1-minute closing statement. Okay, so here we go. Let's start all the way to closest to me, and we'll start with opening statements, and we'll go ahead and pass the mic as we go. Thank you.
Check, check. Thank you for having me. So actually, I had a dream last night that this event was supposed to go on because of snow. Hopefully we have all that behind us. Hi, my name is Diego. It's my sincere pleasure to represent the Oregon College of Oriental Medicine here today. I want to give you a little background on my journey. I immigrated to the United States when I was 9 years old from Caracas, Venezuela. I graduated from the University of Florida with a degree in food chemistry, so today's panel is particularly interesting to me. I spent some time working in the mainstream food industry and became intimately aware of its motto, which is make it cheap, make a lot of it, and make it shelf stable. It's no surprise that this modern culture of convenience over quality has placed the health of our country in peril. In the US, more than 2/3 of all adults are considered clinically overweight or obese. More than 1 in 20 are considered to be extremely obese. Further, the US ranks 49th in the world for life expectancy. These statistics don't belong to a country that is widely received as a world leader. We are here today to help people reconnect with food. Chinese medicine is one of the most strategically advantageous systems for integrating food as medicine. At its heart, Chinese medicine believes that food is medicine. In fact, we are taught that food is our first medicine. We are taught to understand that the common and subtle qualities of food, to balance that with our constitution of our patients and the environment they live in, and even the seasonal influences on their health. When food therapy is not enough to steer the wheel towards health, we employ the use of other tools, one of which is herbal medicine. It's essentially a highly advanced form of food therapy. Food is incredibly complex. Mother Nature takes delicate care to assemble the vast array of nutrients into a finished good, ripe and ready to nourish the human machine with perfect fuel. The way towards a healthier world is through healthier people. The healthiest people are the people who are most deeply connected to nature. Our strongest connection to nature is through our connection with food. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Derek Hartfile. I'm here representing NUNM. I'd love to start thanking Bob Mill for the scholarship, NUNM for my education thus far, OHSU for hosting this event, and SAME for putting on this event. My story with food began about 5 years ago. My background is not in food medicine or health or anything like that. My background is actually in multimedia, business, and about 5 years ago, I got pretty deathly ill. Through that, I saw a lot of people that just couldn't quite help me in the way I needed to be helped, and I finally learned that food and the way I was eating needed to change. I grew up most of my life battling weight. I was the fat kid in school, and there just came a day where the health kind of caught up to me, and I wasn't able to keep going where I was going. So when I learned to change the diet, change what I was putting into my body every single day, and I realized that my health is not in the hands of others, but it's in my hands and what I'm choosing to eat every single day. So it was a long journey to get to where I am, but I'm so glad I found NUNM and this great community of people that are all striving to get to this next level of health, at least in the food as medicine approach. And I thank you for your time today and look forward to getting in a discussion. Thank you.
I also want to thank SAME for putting on this wonderful event, for OHSU for providing me with the educational opportunities that they have, and for Bob's Mill for their generous donation of this scholarship and for helping us to advance health sciences. So I'm Arthur Nepper. I'm the scholarship recipient for OHSU, but I'm also in a way here representing University of Western States, where I'm also a full-time employee. In that role, I work closely with NUNM and Pacific as well, doing research into how we can better promote integrative medicine treatments, therapies, interventions, and procedures throughout the scope of care, continuum of care. One of the projects I'm working on currently is a Promise Global Health Questionnaire, which is a way that we can monitor and track how patient outcomes, or how patients are progressing towards the outcomes we would want over time. At OHSU, probably wondering why it is that I'm doing this type of work. At OHSU, my major is in biomedical informatics, so I really don't have a background in nutrition at all, which makes me kind of an interesting person on this panel. My focus really is on how we can use clinical systems and clinical data and data from around the world to reach better healthcare outcomes, whether it's through delivery of healthcare or whether it's through sharing information that we find out about patients' progression on a broader scale. Relating that back to integrative medicine, and specifically food as medicine, as has been mentioned by some of my colleagues up here already, we've reached a point in healthcare where a lot of the focus for the public health outcomes that we need to have has to be less on intervention and more on wellness, focusing on getting a person to a point where they are healthy, they are well, they're making life choices consistently that are leading them towards wellness. And a huge component of that, as we all know here, is food. It's what we put into our body, it's what we're eating on a regular basis. As has been mentioned, leading cause of death has changed significantly. It used to be infectious disease. Now we look at chronic disease. A lot of times it has to do with heart disease, which is frequently linked to diabetes and obesity in people who are overweight. So getting control of public health, public weight, is a huge component of fighting those diseases.
10 seconds.
Thank you. So really, my interest here and what I'm going to focus on is talking about how we can demonstrate efficacy of nutrition and integrative medicine and use that demonstrated efficacy to bring these kinds of practices to the mainstream and to the public. So, thank you.
Hello, my name is Natasha Smith. I'm here from UWS, and something that I've realized is that if you don't think about your health now, because you don't have time for it, you're going to have to make time to be unhealthy later. We really focus on a curative health instead of a preventative health. And so I think what's really important is that health is a complete health. You need to be mentally healthy, you need to be physically healthy, and even with all those aspects working at their prime, without nutrition, we don't have health. If you exercise every day, but you're going to McDonald's and you're eating a cheeseburger and you're not putting those nutritious, wholesome foods into your body, then you're going to be sick. And we need to educate the population because currently we have a lot of misunderstandings, which is unfortunate. Even people who are in professional programs, such as chiropractics, we all have misunderstandings of nutrition. And it's tricky because media is out there to promote products, not to promote necessarily what is best for you. And we're all individual. So it's really important to understand your own body and what you need to function optimally. So I would really like to thank Bob Redmill for this opportunity to be here today and for the scholarship. I think this is a great chance to promote awareness and hopefully increase nutrition and health, and let's all be the best that we can be. So thank you everyone who is here today for being here, and good luck to everyone. So.
I'm going to sit, but please don't take it personally. My name is Jeff Sabo, and I am an occupational therapy student at Pacific University. I realize that from the standpoint of our traditional model of healthcare, it may seem a bit odd for an OT student to be part of a discussion about food as medicine. But one of the skills of an OT is the ability to address disruptions in a person's daily life while still appreciating a larger environmental context. And that is exactly what I hope to add to this discussion today. According to the WHO, 80% of deaths from heart disease and stroke are caused by high blood pressure, elevated cholesterol, and a low consumption of vegetables and fruits. These common chronic diseases can be prevented and even reversed by making comprehensive lifestyle changes, such as eating a whole grain, plant-based diet. So the question becomes, what can we do as current or future healthcare providers to promote food as medicine? We know what has not worked. Statistics, fear tactics, and half-hearted suggestions like you should really eat less sugar has not brought about real change. If we are going to make a concerted effort to use food as medicine, we should A, adopt such a diet ourselves, and B, become advocates for sustainable structural change. When I say structural change, I'm referring to the systems that have contributed to the skyrocketing rates of cardiovascular disease, stroke, and type 2 diabetes. Children receiving a school breakfast of Fruit Loops and orange juice, federal subsidies for corn and soy production, food deserts located overwhelmingly in communities of color. These are all interconnected problems, and it's why we need a healthcare strategy that does not get hung up on blaming individuals for poor dietary choices, but holds the system accountable for its creation of barriers that prevent the use of food as medicine. Thank you.
10 seconds. I'm going to steal from you guys to make this a little easier. You have two. Thank you so much for your opening statements. We'll start with the first question. Again, you have 1 minute each to respond, and we're going to start with the next person down. And then we'll move back around to the other side of the table. So, question number 1. If you could be any item at a farmer's market, what would you be and why?
I would be, I'm going to stand if that's okay. I would be ginger. I believe it's versatile. It can go in curry and kind of lend to that more savory aspect. It can go in a smoothie. It can go in desserts and be kind of lend towards sweeter. It's incredibly good for you. It's warming. Yeah, ginger.
I'm going to go with an answer here that's maybe a little bit unorthodox, but if I could be any item at the community food co-op, I would be the scanner at the checkout, because I want to know more information about what people are buying, how much they're buying, when they're coming back to buy it. I want to know everything that I can about the trends, the data that we can gather around how people consume food, how they buy it, what drives their decisions to purchase that, so that we can make, as a society, better decisions to drive people towards healthy choices.
I would be cabbage, because whether you're lactose intolerant, gluten intolerant, or just trying to cut down on a few calories, cabbage could be the product for you. Some of my friends use lettuce wraps to cut down on calories or prevent GI upset, but those fall apart. So cabbage will hold strong. Also, it's filled with lots of nutrients. In 1 cup of raw cabbage, you get 190% of your vitamin C daily recommended intake. And you get 90% of your vitamin K. It's also high in insoluble fiber, which means it's going to add viscosity into your gut, which is going to slow down the processing of food, so you can extract more nutrients from all the other foods that you're eating. Bonus is that it's high in folic acid, which means if you're pregnant and you're nurturing a young fetus, you're going to have a healthy child. It's going to help them develop. Also, once you have that child, it comes in a variety of colors. So when you want them to eat their vegetables, you can pick purple cabbage, you can pick green cabbage. And with your busy lifestyle, it's hard to get to the grocery store. So it has a long life, which means you don't need to go to the store as often. So it's also part of the Clean 15, which is an added bonus.
I would be steel-cut oats because they're an excellent source of protein and fiber and vitamins. And they also leave you feeling fuller than traditional oats. And for someone like me who gets hungry every 15 minutes, that's a big bonus. I also love steel-cut oats because I can cook them overnight and just get to them in the morning. And I can also add raisins, walnuts, almond butter, anything else to also improve my health the next day. So, steel-cut oats, go buy it.
I absolutely love this question. If I was any item in the grocery store or grocery aisle, I would be a sweet potato. The color of the sweet potato is normally orange, and that color represents earth in Chinese medicine, which means that that kind of food will tonify and strengthen digestion. It is a sweet flavor, which is a nourishing flavor, and it helps promote growth and health in the body. It's a root vegetable, which means it is a storehouse of nutrients, minerals, vitamins, and phytonutrients. It is sweet. You can cook it savory. It's very versatile. You can do pretty much whatever you want with it. There's Japanese varieties, American varieties, yams. It's low in calorie, high in fiber. It's high in beta-carotene, which is a precursor to vitamin A, and it promotes digestion. So we've heard many times that we are what we eat. I would say that actually we are what we digest. So strengthen digestion with something like a sweet potato will help you get more out of the food you eat in your everyday life.
Thanks very much. Question number 2. And I didn't mention it earlier, but if we can make sure that our cell phones are off, I think I did hear one ring a little bit earlier. That'd be great. And then let's hold our applause till the end of each question from now on. Thanks so much for your support, though. You'll probably get sorry hands by the end. So question number 2. What points would you highlight when explaining the importance of food as medicine to a patient?
I'm at a bit of a disadvantage here, as I will probably never actually do direct patient care. But what I might do someday, if I'm lucky, is explain the benefits of nutrition to my own children. I think that the way that I would approach that is talking about food and nutrition not as from the perspective of a diet or from the perspective of eliminating things, but rather from the perspective of adding things that are healthy and good for you. I think for a long time we've thought about nutrition and eating as, I shouldn't eat this because this is horrible for me, or I know that this is bad for me, rather than thinking about ways that we can add things that are delicious and nutritious to our diet, find things that we're excited about eating. So what I would encourage my patient, in this case maybe my child, to do would be to find things that they really like, to make food for them that they really like, and do that in a way that's also very nutritious. And speak with them about how we can make this, how can we make this fun? How can we make this something that's good, that's additive to your life, rather than something that's feeling like it's cutting things out or detrimental. So I think with whether it's a patient or anyone you're talking to about food, that's a really good approach to take.
Well, the great thing about food is that there's so many benefits from a variety of foods. And if I was talking with one of my patients, they may not have a very large understanding of all those benefits, so I'd probably want to keep it semi-simplistic and kind of bring an analogy in that if you have a car, what you put in your car is going to determine how your car runs. If you put in good quality gas, your car is going to run a lot better. If you were to put in, say you want to put in Gatorade, your car might not run very well. So your body is essentially that car, and understanding what to put in it is going to help it run a lot more efficiently. I think something that we can all relate to is that we have family members who are getting older, and as we get older, our bodies start to slow down. And when we're at a younger age, it's hard to realize the effects of the future on us, but if we can put health into our bodies now, those last few years of our lives, we can spend and really enjoy them.
10 seconds.
We can have more fun and be with those who we love. So I think nutrition is really important, and I'd love to just get a basic understanding down with my clients.
So one of the things that occupational therapists do is what we call an occupational profile, and that's essentially an initial interview with a client. So you sit down and you go over their daily routine. And regardless of who you are, one of the things that will encompass your daily routine is food. And traditionally, we talk about what times clients are eating, but we also need to ask what they're eating too. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I don't believe that things like fear tactics really promote behavior change. But if you go over someone's diet and they talk about feeling lethargic and how they have no energy, and they have digestive issues and problems with bowel movements, I think that occupational profile, that initial interview, is a great opportunity to just pause and say, okay, let's talk about that. What types of foods are you eating? How do they make you feel? So I think that that is a great opportunity from the OT perspective.
So this is a critical point. I've experienced it myself as an athlete and also personal trainer. What's important is that nutrition gives you the resources for your body to maintain health. The food you eat influences the form and the function of your body. And instead of taking an approach of elimination, which a lot of people do whenever you get a patient with perhaps a poor diet, you can perhaps approach it with an idea of adding wholesome good foods, which is often easier and less negative than saying don't eat certain things. So any doctor will only be able to guide the health process of the human body. We can't directly influence it. In the end, we just kind of stand by and let the body do its own healing. Eating the right foods that are delicious for the person that wants to eat them, will give the body the resources it needs to then approach health in a better way. Thank you.
If I had a couple points I could share with a future client about food and food as medicine, it would be that, number one, as I mentioned in my opening statement, you can take charge of your life. When you start eating healthy, you eat right. You know, a client can leave a meeting with you and go to the grocery store, pick up their favorite foods, and by favorite I mean their newly found favorite foods, vegetables, etc. Another point is that they can make it fun. Food doesn't have to be this battle of diets and what should I eat, what shouldn't I eat. It can just simply be the right food at the right time. And I believe that you can make it a family experience too, whether it's just going home and making a bone broth or something to heal your gut. The fact that you can actually take charge of it, make it personal, make it fun, and not make it a constant battle that people feel like today are constantly striving to avoid, I guess.
Thank you all very much. Take a nice breather. We're halfway through. Next question. Discuss 1 to 2 important ecological considerations when making dietary recommendations.
So I'm sure if you have Netflix, you've heard of Cowspiracy, and how, if you haven't seen it, it's a video talking about how most of our Earth is actually spent raising food to feed cows. And so it's actually taking up a lot of the Earth, it takes up a lot of our water supply, and we only have so many resources. And I think a really important thing to understand is that if we overconsume and if we indulge, and especially if we're eating in cow products, we're eventually going to run out of resources. And so we need to eat for a sustainable future. And if you did not know that information, you would be eating food thinking, I'm trying to be healthy, I'm going to get meats, I'm going to get carbs, I'm going to get proteins. But once you understand the information, if you know what's going on, you can realize how it's actually impacting the earth. So I think that just bringing awareness to our water supplies is really important. So what we eat does affect our earth and our footprint, and we want to have a small footprint so that we can live on this earth together. And that's why eating green foods is really important, because it takes up the least amount of space and we can still get all the nutrients that we need.
So one of the things that is really exploding in popularity right now is the consumption of superfoods. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to consume these products because they're packed with nutrients and vitamins. But sometimes we don't consider the ecological impact abroad of extracting these materials. One of the most popular superfoods out there is quinoa, and for good reason. But it's harvested in Peru and Bolivia, and it used to be the grain that people could afford no matter what your income was. But now, because of the high demand in Western diets, it's not that way anymore. In Bolivia, for example, they used to have a very diverse agricultural landscape, but because quinoa is so profitable because of that Western demand, they've essentially cleared out that diversity and are just growing quinoa.
10 seconds.
So being cognizant and really communicating to clients that you want to be healthy, you want to consume things that are good for you, but make them as local as possible, and do think about the environmental impact abroad and the effect it has on people.
Thank you. There are some important considerations. One of them is a seasonal effect. The foods that you eat in the winter are encoded with nutritional information that helps the body adapt to the process of the winter time. Same thing with the summertime. So eating foods that are in season is a way to sort of be in more harmony with nature. Another consideration that you want to take into account is distance. At the point that you pick something from a vine or a tree, it begins to mature and go through its own aging process and essentially loses nutritional value. So the best thing to do is to buy locally. If you can, grow your own food as much as possible, even if it's just herbs, to spice and season your food, because that addresses both the seasonal effect and the distance effect. Lastly, sustainability and the environmental impact that we've mentioned before. We are all in this together. It is all our planet, and we have to make choices that affect the positive outcome for ourselves and the children after us and the grandchildren and everybody that comes after us. So those are all three important considerations.
As far as environmental sustainability, something I personally would like to see, I know it's been a problem for a long time, but plastics. You know, if you go to the grocery store and buy a pack of Oreos, it is not only shoved into plastic, but then it's wrapped in plastic. Growing up, and again, for me, nutrition is a new thing. I only switched my diet about 5 years ago. And by diet, I mean lifestyle in general. But just a quick account, I used to stuff my garbage can and recycling bin so full every week from all the leftover plastics and bags and everything that I would use, just leftover from wrapping our food. And something I noticed in the last couple of years is I've gone now 2-3 weeks without sending my garbage out to the end of the driveway because I'm not packing it full of all those plastics. Most of it I'm either composting or recycling, and so my garbage consumption, or garbage production rather, has gone so far down by just buying local food, growing local food, and I would love to see that personally, is the plastic consumption.
Well, I think that environmental concerns around food are a huge issue, and I think it goes really beyond eating healthy to being able to eat at all. We live in a region here of great abundance. We have access to clean water, we have access to rich soil. We have the ability, we in fact have a great privilege in that we are able to eat locally and still eat a huge variety of incredibly nutritious, nutrient-dense food. That's not true necessarily around the rest of the world and even in other parts of the United States. As our environment changes based on a lot of things that we have effectively done to it, it's going to be harder and harder to get a full, rich, growing season in other parts of the world. And so while it's wonderful to espouse the virtues of eating local, and I certainly think we should, we also need to, in doing that, bear in mind that we need to develop long-term strategies and plans for how we're going to deal with feeding the rest of the world that doesn't happen to live in areas that have the resources that we do. It goes beyond not stripping resources from a country like Peru or Bolivia, but also thinking about how can we change the way that we manufacture, produce, and distribute food, even here in the United States.
10 seconds.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Now to the last open question. What tradition could you create or pass on to future generations to promote healthy eating habits?
What tradition? I'm going to take a tradition that exists to an extent, and that is preparing food and eating together. I think that over the past several decades, it's become very common for with two working parents to just have food that's not very nutrient dense, that you can just really throw in the microwave, throw in the oven, and then everyone just kind of eats it in front of the TV. But that really disconnects us from the food that we eat. So if I were to create a tradition or reinstate a tradition, it would be a family eating together at the table for dinner, preferably one that was made by at least one of the parents, if not also teaching the kids how to cook that food in a healthy way from a young age, so they don't end up at 18 and cooking top ramen like I did.
Thank you. I would say gardens. I would like to see gardens in front yards, gardens in backyards, gardens on top of buildings, gardens on top of skyscrapers. I mean, everywhere that you can, that you have green space with adequate sunlight and access to water, you should be growing food. The reason why is because the connection with food is what's going to reverse the direction that we're going with in terms of poor health. People that are connected with food, people that are connected with the growing process, aren't as likely to stray away and choose convenience and something salty and sweet and greasy whenever you have access to a fresh, ripe tomato that you grew in your backyard. Nothing compares to that. And I think if we can reconnect children and people with that sort of, that wonder, the sense of growth and wonder that we had all as kids, I think that we'll all end up in a much better place down the road. Thank you.
I'm going to piggyback on both my peers, actually, in that gardening, for sure, I would love to see brought back. Again, I grew up as a fat kid, hated vegetables my whole life until about a couple of years ago. But gardening was something that, for me, brought a new passion for the food I was making. It's a lot of work. I'm definitely not good at it by any means yet so far, but by doing it, I was less likely to want to sit down and mindlessly watch TV at the end of the day after creating this big meal, after working so hard to prep all the food that, for months of, creating this food. I was less likely to want to sit there and just mindlessly watch TV, which I still do occasionally. But the point is that the food we make, growing it, being a part of it, making it part of you, prepping it, especially, I believe as you mentioned, as a family, I think is just absolutely incredible. My wife and I sit down now, quiet evening, we can look, appreciate the food that we grew, and really enjoy the food, taste the food, and just make it really a part of us.
Well, I really agree, and I think that you've all brought up really wonderful suggestions, and kind of along those same lines, I think bringing back a respect for food, a respect and appreciation of food, listening to our bodies, listening to what our bodies are telling us we need nutritionally, something that hasn't really been brought up here, but I think it's an amazing attribute of the human body in that we get these cravings, right? You get craving for a certain food, and it's a way of your body saying, hey, you need these nutrients. I think that we need to find a way to cultivate individually and societally a renewed respect and appreciation for our food and our food's relationship to our body. So treating that as something where it's a quiet moment where you take that time to appreciate the food that's set in front of you, growing a garden so that you're connected to and intimately associated with that food, and making food as a family, those are all things that you can do that increase the significance of the food you're putting in your body, connect you with it more tightly, and really make food a recognized component of a healthy life that extends beyond just the act of eating.
So I'd really like to focus on mindful eating. In today's busy society, I feel like we come home, sit down in front of the TV, and we just eat, and we don't even notice what we're eating until the full bag of chips is gone. And that's a problem. We need to find one area that we can go to. We sit down every night, we create habits, healthy habits, where we sit down in that place, we have a small serving size of a plate. When we have the large plates, it's easier to fill it up more. A small plate, we fill up our food, and when we're done, we're done. And something to think about when we're mindfully eating is placing your fork down in between every single bite. We sometimes can't even breathe, we're eating so quickly. If we place it down and we actually concentrate on those wholesome nutrients that we're putting into our bodies, we'll appreciate the food more, and it'll actually take longer for us to digest, so we'll end up eating less. It's a great way to help control obesity, and if you're trying to work on weight loss, and I mean, as a family, even better, because you just get that built sense of environment. I think that's really important.
Thank you all very much. Now we're going to go to our closing statements, and we'll start from this side and go down the way we started. And I'll leave it to you, 1 minute each.
In closing, I think food needs to be recognized as one of the primary pillars of health. There's no medicine in the world that can fully replace a healthy diet. We are beings of flesh and blood, and our bodies need clean and wholesome sustenance. As medical professionals, we are beholden to recognizing this fact and guiding our patients towards a harmony between food and nature. In the end, preventative medicine is the best medicine. We've heard that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. By doing everything in our power to provide the body with the nutrients it needs, we can generally get out of the way of ourselves and let the inner intelligence of the human body guide itself towards health and harmony. This is perhaps the most important step, and it begins with the education and access to the right foods. I want to thank Bob's Red Mill and the Student Alliance for Integrative Medicine for collaborating on this event and letting us all come together to discuss this very important topic. Thank you.
In closing, as I mentioned previously, I believe food is medicine. It was for me, for sure. It saved my life. And I believe it is up to you to incorporate daily food, the right food at the right time, choosing food, nutritious food, that not only is going to sustain you, but just honestly, it's going to change the way you feel inside. It really did, again, save my life. But in closing, I got to quote Michael Pollan, who said, "Eat food, not too much, mostly vegetables."
So I also want to thank SANE for putting this event together. I really want to thank Bob's Red Mill again for your generous sponsorship. And I really want to thank all 5 universities